Welcome to the Filmistines, the double feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmistines, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience. All around you. And welcome back to another episode of the Filmistines. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I am joined by my demented friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with brand new episodes of the Filmistines. Some recent episodes include Sasquatch Sunset, their original Mad Max, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, Mad Max 3, Beyond Thunderdome, and Mad Max Fury Road. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. Come subscribe for $1. Come request a movie, any movie. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we'll be discussing George Miller's 2024 film, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Maybe not the greatest name, leading to some poor performances in the box office. But I will start off by saying that this is a phenomenal movie. It's sort of what Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome was to Mad Max 2 in regards to Mad Max Fury Road. We get a lot more texture of the world, the wasteland. We bring a really interesting structure to the geography. I really enjoyed this light political dynamic of so-called maybe opposing warlords with Dementus and Morton Joe. As political as a barbaric, desolate wasteland could ever really offer, right? We have a really strange structure of story going from child to adult. And we're also offered through Chris Hemsworth with his prosthetic nose. He must have called on Lenny Bernstein, right? Great personality competition with Morton Joe, especially in this locale with our new Morton Joe because we lost our previous Morton Joe. R.I.P. in pieces. But I was thinking about you while watching this movie because it seems to run a little more linear with Beyond Thunderdome and offering us a proper protagonist and lore. So how do you feel about Furiosa?
Yeah, I really liked the movie. I wasn't sure when we saw the trailer whether I was going to like it or not, but that was before we went on our Mad Max kick, so I really had no idea what these movies were about.
Now you need to rewatch the trailer and see what you think then.
Yeah. And I think one of the problems people have with this movie is that there's this stink on prequels. Especially a prequel that's not about our main character. And like you said, adding a Mad Max saga to the title really confused a lot of people. But I'm not mad that it's a prequel. I actually liked it a lot. Very similar to how I loved Solo a lot.
Oh.
I haven't seen all the Star Wars movies. I don't think I ever will.
I mean, a funny thing about that is the modern Star Wars people, like people our age who have come up with the prequels and stuff, seem to hate Solo, but the original Star Wars fan base seemed to like Solo, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's this stink with it. Especially, maybe there's something to that, especially with people our generation really loving Fury Road.
Mm-hmm.
And not being with the, crew back then.
It's actually funny that you bring that up too, because I think it's called Star Wars Rogue One, or Rogue One, a Star Wars Story, or something like that. But I think it's a prequel to the first Star Wars, the original first Star Wars. And it's my favorite. So maybe I'm immune to the prequel.
But that's the one that has a girl, right?
Yeah, I think her name's Felicity Jones. She plays, I think her name's June or Jane in The Theory of Everything with Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, the wife.
Yeah, the wife.
Okay. And there's something similar here with having Furiosa as our main character, a girl.
Oh yeah, I didn't even connect that dot. Yeah, that's true. And I love this movie too.
Do we just not like prequels with girls in it?
Maybe. I don't know how people feel about Rogue One exactly.
But again, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at the title either. I like that we're tying Max back in because this is Max's world, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. But I will say, like I said in Fury Road's episode, go listen to it. It's a great episode. Furiosa is kind of the main character in that film, and it could have been called Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga.
Yep.
Very easily, and this could have had a different title. So the name is fine, and we'll talk about it later, but I can't believe how poor it's performing in the box office.
Okay, yeah, I try not to get into spoilers with the budget and stuff, but okay, I didn't know it was doing bad. I thought it would do really well being Memorial Day weekend.
Well, apparently it's the lowest box office sales of any Memorial Day weekend in the last 30 years. It's including COVID's Memorial weekends.
Oh, shit.
That's wild, right?
Weren't the movie theaters closed?
Maybe they...
How does that happen?
I don't know. I don't remember, actually.
And I'm glad we're on the same page because a lot of people are comparing it to Fury Road.
No, this is much more like Beyond Thunderdome, right? You feel me on that.
But I'm seeing a lot of comments with it doesn't live up to Fury Road. And I don't know exactly how I feel about that because I don't think it's fair to quite say that just like our A Color Purple episode. It's not fair to say it doesn't live up to the original because it's different. It's a different movie here altogether.
Yeah. Yes,
we're still in the Mad Max world, but you can't not like a movie because you like the other one better.
Yeah, you can like both.
Or
are you getting that impression that they don't like this movie because the other one's better?
I'm getting the impression that they're not giving this movie a chance because the other one's better.
Okay, because I agree. I think Fury Road is borderline a masterpiece. I don't think this film's on that level, but this is maybe my favorite movie of 2024.
Yeah, you can't knock it down just because you like the other one better. Yeah, exactly.
I was actually really surprised how much I like it because of the structure of the plot.
Yeah, we can get to that in a bit, but I think this movie is super important for the world building, for this world that George Miller has created, because we get a lot more of the world. I think you said it earlier, but the world building is just insane here. We actually not only know more about Gastown and the other areas, but we go inside Gastown and we know what it looks like, and Bullet Farm or whatever it's called, and they all look great. So I think that was very important for George Miller to capture more of his world. And I also like, and this might just be me, but that it explained to me why Furiosa did the things she did in the previous film. I love that. That's one thing that kept me up at night. Why the fuck was she doing everything? Who is this character? I needed an explanation. I think I'm just one of those people that need an explanation for movies. I can't let my imagination fill in the gaps. Maybe because I read and books don't allow you to fill in the gaps. They allow you to visually see things in your head, but books explain everything. And then there's 20 more books to accompany your books. Yeah. So it might just be me. I'm one of those people that really want to know why characters are doing something, and I love that it's explained here.
Absolutely. And I don't think that's really a fault either of you. It's the core of Fury Road. It's the reason the movie's happening, and it's so loud and beautiful and focused that it's almost just missing that piece to the puzzle.
Yes.
I get that.
Because she has some really strong performative pieces in Fury Road that this explanation was needed. I mean, there's a scene in Fury Road where she kneels down and she's just exhausted, and there's so much emotion there that it takes this kind of movie to let you know what really is going through her mind. You almost want to watch Fury Road again, keeping Furiosa in mind. Maybe not exactly, because it's about 10 years later and some creative choices have to be made. It's not the same girl, the same actor. So take it as you will there. The vision might be not as 100%, but at least her intentions and her story and her revenge story and her redemption story are there. And I really like that.
Yeah, in retrospect especially, it's maybe a little ballsy, or super ballsy, I really should say, to make a movie like Fury Road, driven by, excuse the pun, Furiosa to the nth plus one degree, when there is so much baggage and we really don't get any of it other than knowing she has some connection, deep connection to the Green Place.
Yeah. But the performances are good in the movie. The score is good. The cinematography is great. I love all the action here. The symbolism and some of that legend, myth feel that we have in the franchise, we keep that and I like it. But I do think that it doesn't have the charm or that oddness or bizarreness that I'm looking for. But again, it's not a Mad Max movie. It's its own thing. Furiosa is not the weird, bizarre one.
I mean, it only really furthers my whole thing about these films being so weird next to each other. I want to focus on that point of this legendary element even happening within Furiosa, because all of a sudden there's a self-awareness and meta play and knowing these aren't stories that necessarily happened in this world. They're the stories that are being told and passed down through the years, which I feel a little guilty for liking so much because it's so explicit, at the very end, where did Furiosa kill Dementus or not, or how she killed him or whatever, and we get the different playouts. Not too unsimilar to American Fiction. It's almost a little cheesy or campy. I'm not sure how to classify camp in the world of Mad Max because it's so absurd and takes itself so serious that is camp by definition, I think, but it doesn't feel like it, What do you think about that explicit acknowledgement of this sort of meta theme that's been happening all along with Mad Max, the franchise, in that these stories are stories. They're not observations of what's happening.
I like them too. I don't think I think about it while I'm watching the movie. It's something I have to reflect on after the movie, but it really helps when you have a narrator to bring you back into that, oh yeah, did this even happen? This is just a badass story being told. Because that's very obvious in Mad Max 2. Because we have that narrator, we have that little kid, and it almost feels like a campfire story being passed down, but not, campfire that you go with your friends, glamping, but this survival fire that's there to keep you warm.
I like what you say about keeping you warm because the story itself is also igniting this warmth of hope.
That's a good one. I like that.
You said it.
You're welcome. And in this movie, we have a narrator, which is what clued me into the mythness and the ending, of course. Like, did she do this? Did she do this? I heard she did this, and it's told by that narrator. And that just adds to that feeling of watching the action and the badass and stuff. Because with every great story, you're not going to make someone look like a loser. You're not going to tell the bad qualities of a person unless there's a lesson in there somewhere. You're going to make them look cooler and legendary than they actually were.
It's like the reciprocal of the Green Knight, where in the Green Knight we get a more literal telling of the journey and his mistakes and his cowardly ways. Furiosa and Fury Road even are those stories that are passed down and questioned to have ever happened.
Yeah. Like, what? She kidnapped the 5 wives and took them, and one of them was pregnant and got run over? What? That's insane. What did you think about the narrator here? And I also noticed that in the wiki page for Furiosa, they called it the potential unreliable narrator. Is it just calling it that because we don't know what happened to Dementus?
Yeah, that's a little stupid. Calling someone a potentially unreliable narrator just means that they're a stranger to you, basically. It's like there's no reason to believe them, but there's also no reason to not believe them. So it's just like, that's...
Yeah, just the unknown narrator. Boom. Fixed. There's nothing in this film that makes you question what happened.
Yeah, like the feral kid in Mad Max 2 is more unreliable because you find out at the end that we're being told the story, from him.
Years and years later.
Years and years later. So it's like the same scenario. Like, we really don't have any reason to not believe him, but it's a campfire story. It's obviously very flamboyant and it's telling, and
it's a story, yeah.
It's a story. So your basis for an unreliable narrator should be obviously Amadeus.
Yes.
You can put together this little criteria and match it, and if you get, a substantial number of similarities, then you start to wonder. Otherwise, they are reliable, innocent until proven guilty, or there's something a little more complex going on. Like here, and the rest of the Mad Maxes, when you find out at the end, especially Mad Max 2 and Beyond Thunderdome, at the end, you learn that this story is being told at a campfire. And so reliability is not in question, right?
Yeah.
It's a meta form of storytelling. Do you trust J.K. Rowling to give you all the facts and be reliable when she's writing the story of Harry Potter? Like, no, she's not a character in it, She's the narrator, I guess, in a sense. She wrote the book. I don't know, that's just...
It's weird.
Salieri in Amadeus is the unreliable narrator. That's all you need to study. He's the king of it.
Yes.
It's a great movie, by the way. All right, next question.
I also like that we keep the brutality here. George Miller is a pro at not showing you too much, but kind of letting that imagination just run wild and fill in the gap of how people get got. He's the king at it. I mean, he starts out with Mad Max 1 with that ending with the wife and the kid get got. It's awesome. And here we have Praetorian Jack getting pulled on that motorcycle, and he's getting dragged, and it's all covered in smoke, and then they release a dog. And he's not showing you him getting eaten by the dog, but he is. And it's so brutal. Or that scene with the little war boy. I don't know if he's little or if he's a dwarf. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but he's the one inside the war rig at the end, and he's going to do that last final.
Yeah, what exactly happened there? Did the lid shut a little too hard on his head?
That's what I thought. Is that what happened?
That's what I think happened. I was like, that's unfortunate and hilarious.
That was brutal. That was so brutal. And she opened the lid and saw him, and he was dead. That's probably when my heart broke a little. And I was starting to think this movie isn't as brutal as the other ones, but no, her arm getting tangled in the tire, that was brutal. And oh my God, there's so much brutality. And I love it. I love that we keep that.
The violence is awesome. George Miller is so easily the king of depicting violence on screen. I don't think it's as violent as Fury Road. I don't think we have as many deaths. I don't think there's as much so-called action in that way. But I will say this violence feels much more intimate and personal, especially because we get a little bit of a 1v1 feeling thing. Like there's a fight for our lives and not for anything else.
Yeah, you might be onto something there, because in the first movie, we barely see the kid. And Max isn't even attached to the kid. So there's no real loss for us. It's just like the audacity of killing a kid. And the wife, we know a little bit more about the wife, but again, we're not in love with her. We don't fall in love with her. We don't form a relationship with her. And even in Fury Road, we don't know the wives. We don't know why they're really running away. We don't know their backstory. We don't get emotionally attached to them. And here we do. We get emotionally attached to Praetorian Jack just because Furiosa is.
I mean, he's also, like, I don't know, maybe the only person who feels like a human being and caring.
Yeah.
He wants to teach Furiosa. Of course, Furiosa just proved that she was a badass and she could really offer something to him.
Yeah, she's very capable.
But there was a real relationship forming in that traumatic experience, you know?
Yeah, and even though there was not a lot of dialogue, again, he's also the king of no dialogue, but being really expressive through action and emotion. We have that scene where Furiosa grabs Praetorian Jack and holds on to him like her mom held on to her. And oh my God, that's awesome. They're family. They're not even like, it's not even a romantic relationship anymore that you thought that's where this was headed. And it kind of was, but it's this like family thing, this union of your clan. You found a person you can trust in this world.
Yeah, perfectly said. It brings into question, this whole world does, the idea of being in love or any kind of romance. Like, this is the most you could probably get out of someone. This is that fundamental launching point for any relationship, and that being trust.
Yeah.
And it's different than Max and Furiosa and Fury Road, because we know Max is a little bit of a softie. You know, when push come to shove, he's, okay, I'm going to save you guys.
I'll do it.
You know, so there's something kind of fun and charming in that way. But Furiosa's not charming. She's driven and passionate and had a taste of what maybe the world could look like, you know?
Yeah.
And she was taken away and had everything taken away from her. So there's something much deeper and personal there than... And I guess you could say the same thing about Max in some way. But those losses didn't hang up Max so much. He gave in to the animal side a little easier than Furiosa, maybe.
Yeah.
It just wasn't part of his nature, I guess.
And that's why these deaths just seem more brutal. Besides that, we start falling in love with these war boys. They're so funny. They're so charming. There's something about them. And them being my favorite part of Fury Road, especially with Nux's character, you have already felt something for them and their half-lives.
Yeah, and it puts in the back of your mind the remembrance of that these are still people and there's room for change, and that there's just an abundant amount of personality waiting to kind of come out and identify with these people. So that's because of Nux.
And he's so charming. He's a little nervous. He's not as sure. He's not like these other radicals that are ready to like jump in front of a moving car. He's awkward. And his little tiny hand has that little chrome, and it looked like he was eating it. Like, he just wasn't sure how to be this kamikaze war boy. So we gave him some personality. We made him now an individual, and we just demolished him in the silliest way. And it was so sad. Oh my God, it was so sad. Because she opened that lid, and you just saw him there. And I was like, oh my God, why isn't he getting up? And then I realized, and I was like, oh no, I didn't think I would cry in a Mad Max movie. And I didn't. I didn't. But I might be close right here. Because who even cried for Goose in the first Mad Max? Who fell in love with Goose and now is like, oh no, he died, he got. No one. This one was good. It was very similar to Nux's death in the first one. George Miller figured out how to get you. I don't tend to notice inconsistencies or plot holes in movies a lot. It really requires me to watch them over and over and really think about them, and I don't want to do that. But I noticed here Immortan Joe has a son that we didn't see in Fury Road, and then we didn't see the other son, the crippled looking one. in the movie. And I know we'll talk about this later, but the end of this movie picks up right when Fury Road starts. And I didn't see anything happen to that son.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. There's this room for your imagination a little bit, I think, because you see a little bit of that with, well, the People Eater is not in charge of Gastown either. And, that becomes very clear by the end of it. Yeah.
I told you.
Presumably, Bullet Farm's also back in working order? I guess we don't get very much detail on Gastown or Bullet Farm, but we do call for reinforcements at one point in Fury Road at the very beginning to go get Furiosa. So there's something there too. I kind of like that they run into each other like that, but it does open up a few doors that maybe you wouldn't want open. You want a little bit of time there, because also Anya Taylor-Joy looks much younger than Charlize Theron, so you could have played up, that 10, 15 year difference kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that was enough time to get Bullet Farm in working order again, because I don't think it's going to be fixed over the course of a few months with a 40-day war in the middle of that. Unless I'm mistaken and there was more time in between the finality of Dementus and Furiosa stealing the wives. How do you... Kidnapping? Wife capping? How do you...
Wife napping?
Wife napping, yeah. And I guess, to be fair, as far as the little guy in the chair with the tubes sticking out of him and stuff, we didn't see much of the Capitol proper, like the politics of it, and Morton Joe speaking to his people and stuff. And so there's room for him to be there, but the other brother, you gotta assume, where's he at?
He seems important enough to let us know how he died.
Sure. I mean, he's visually striking. He's fucked up looking, and so you can't just forget about him. So yeah, I mean, I see that. I'm completely unfazed by it, to be honest. But I will say our new Immortan Joe isn't as powerful on screen as our original Immortan Joe.
Yes. That was Toe Cutter, right?
Yeah, Toe Cutter.
I think there's just something about him, because in that first movie, he definitely steals the show.
The guy who played Toe Cutter and the first Immortan Joe, his name was Hugh Keys Byrne, I think his name is. He died in 2020. So...
Dang, he was so close.
Yeah. So it was just something I felt that missing. I was just like, oh man, he's just not. I didn't know though, but
I'm there with you. There's just something about his presence on screen that he steals the scene.
Yeah. And Immortan Joe, and we'll get into Dementus here in a second, but man, Immortan Joe should be studied until the end of times as far as character design and just character personality and how to capture him on screen. It's unbelievable. Now, I will say, Dementus, it's just another George Miller thing, man. He has his characters on lock. Dementus is awesome. I know you were a little worried about Chris Hemsworth being part of the Mad Max universe.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, I'm not a Chris Hemsworth fan, but I could see a more absurd Thor kind of making sense. A Thor-like character kind of making sense in the Mad Max world. Did we get that? Maybe a little bit, but I'll tell you something funny I think we did get. His accent sounds just like Taika Waititi. And I know there's a little bit of beef between them, which I thought was funny. But man, the characterization of this guy is awesome. I don't know who I love more, Immortan Joe from Fury Road or Lord Dementus. His nomadic army of motorcycle guys is awesome. His lack of concern about the future is awesome. Like, he doesn't really seem all that interested in settling down and getting some kind of supply chain happening and everything. He's just on the prowl, taking everything he can. And man, oh man, his chariot with his horses being motorcycles might be the coolest thing I've ever seen in my fucking life.
That was pretty cool.
It was awesome. Loved it. I fucking loved it. I cannot tell you enough.
Yeah, Thor is probably the lamest Marvel character, in my opinion. Out of the Avengers, don't include the oddballs here and there. But I definitely think he stepped away from that and completely transformed himself into Dementus. I agree with you. I liked him a lot. I don't think he's my favorite. I think Immortan Joe is definitely my favorite.
Hard to top.
Yeah, it's hard to top. It really is. But I love Dementus. He was a dick. He was so dumb, but kind of sneaky. So he was smart. You gotta be smart to be sneaky. But he just didn't plan ahead. I mean, everything you said, basically. And I liked him a lot. I liked his character. I liked how just bad he is. He's just bad. He's bad at making choices. He gives up one of his best mechanics. Like, here you go. He didn't even think twice about it. He didn't hesitate. Nothing. And yeah, I loved it.
Organic mechanic.
Is that his name?
One of the best names I've ever heard in my life, too. Organic mechanic.
That's hilarious.
I want to be an organic mechanic when I grow up.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I did see that the nose was distracting people a lot. I didn't find it that distracting. I think I only noticed it in one scene where I was like, wait a minute, that's not his nose. And then that was it.
Yeah, I didn't even nose it.
You didn't know. I really liked his cape and the transformation his cape had. And it kind of played along with his own transformation, which I like that. I love all the symbolism and the imagery in this movie. Because the cape starts out white, and then through some unfortunate circumstances, is it a flare that goes off or something that colors it red? I wasn't sure what it was. If it was just like a smoke bomb.
It was like a smoke flare.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that was called.
Yeah. And then it paints it red.
And his hair, I loved it when he shows up to the Citadel and he's got that slick back red hair
And the beard.
Awesome. Yeah, and the beard, yeah, he looks awesome.
And then when they went and traded Furiosa, and he said, this is my daughter, they painted her hair red too, like his. It was so funny. Like, see that sneaky, clever shit that just is so dumb. I love it. And then by the end of the movie, his cape kind of has this ombre effect, where it's like red and then goes black, where he's just, lost it. And I love it. It's so clever.
Yeah, I mean, he starts off with somewhat of a good heart, I think. As good of a heart as you can have in the wasteland. He looks after his people. For the most part, everyone seems to be a peer.
Yeah, because right away I couldn't tell if he was going to be a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah. And there is that development into just total dementedness.
Great character. Chris Hemsworth played him really well.
What do you think of the structure of the plot? Where we go from young Furiosa to adult Furiosa, different actors, obviously.
Which, shout out to the casting director, whatever they're called. Because I think they looked pretty similar.
Yeah, I'm not mad about the so-called recast, but I do have a little bit of issues with like time skips like that.
Because we went through so many time skips.
And they were, for the most part, kind of small time skips, a couple years here, a couple years here, a couple years here, right? And you have to imagine not a lot changes after you get control of something like the Citadel. Like, you probably have control over it for a while. There's not a lot of competition out there, especially when you have the relationships with Bullet Farm and Gastown, right? So, Furiosa gets involved in this. She needs time to plan. She needs to wait for the right opportunity. So this all kind of jives with me, but it seemed to lack some focus for probably the first half of the movie. There wasn't a real clear through line of what exactly is the reason for all this, for the movie, really. Which, you got to stick with it, and it pays off, right? That's the whole point of payoff, right? I might have to watch it again. I'm not really sure how it made me feel at the end of the day. What do you think?
I do agree we spent a little too much time with young Furiosa and not really knowing what she was learning from Dementus. But I think that was just there to show us that she was learning a lot. She was learning how to be a badass. And we could already kind of tell she was going to be a badass based off her mom and just the way maybe she was brought up. But I think that helped sell Dementus's speech at the end, and just his pleading and everything. I don't exactly remember what he said, because unfortunately you can't pause when you go see a movie at a movie theater. I wish you could, but that'd be crazy. That'd be annoying, but that'd be weird. But I do think we spent a little too much time there, to the point where I was like, hey, I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was in this. But I'm not mad at it. Like you said, there's a payoff. I think it worked. I do personally like all the little time skips. And again, I love it when directors very obviously let you know that there's been a time skip. I don't like being confused when there's a time skip. I don't like thinking about it. I just want to immediately know, hey, her hair got longer.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's just a sign of good visual storytelling.
Yes, agreed. And I loved it too when he showed it to us through the wig. When the wig got tossed and it landed on a branch, and then the leaves start growing around it, and then it forms into a nest. Again, just to show us the passage of time. And that scene was like 2 seconds. I mean, it was nothing. And it was really cool.
And it also helped show the development of the Citadel, because in Fury Road, it's much more lush and green up top. And here, when you first see the Citadel, you're like, oh man, it's looking a little dry up there.
That's a good point.
No, I think that was probably the best transition as far as time. And of course, the cutting the hair and then letting it grow back out is an easy one.
I feel like that's an easy one just to quickly show you. Like, there's no big plot point on why we're moving a few years, like there was with that specific transition, like you just said, showing you the Citadel. So I think he knew exactly when to use what.
Yeah, it's fair. Well said. And she also needs to spend the most amount of time in the Citadel, learning the Citadel and knowing the right time to do X, Y, and Z. And so we get 2 big time skips there, I think.
And for them to forget who she is.
That's true. I mean, it sells itself. I really don't have a problem with it. I'm just a little on edge when I see that.
Yes, but I also think they did a great job with actually giving us title cards.
I like the title cards. That is so trendy right now, I swear. And I think there were 5 total.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes. And the first one was called The Pole of Inaccessibility, and it threw me off. Honestly, I don't know what that is. I had to Google it. Apparently, it's the farthest and most difficult access point in any given landmass, blah, 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 sea, whatever. But I don't know that while I'm watching the movie, so I'm thinking all these title cards are about to be clever and something I won't know. But then the next ones are like Wasteland and Homeward, and I'm like, okay, I got those. But I think you're right. I think they're kind of trendy right now. But I also don't think they were necessary in a film like Fury Road. We're on a road the whole time.
Yeah, there isn't a more focused film on Earth, probably. We're going to the green place, we're going back.
How did you feel about the introduction where we have that very brief 911 call? It didn't feel brief to me because I was thrown off, but it was, compared to the rest of the movie, very brief.
Yeah, it seemed to me to be this movie's way of planting yourself in. At the moment, everything started to fall apart in the normal, ordered world, like we saw in the first 3 Mad Maxes. And I think we got a similar monologue from Max and Fury Road. So it seemed to just be that sort of introduction for Furiosa.
I was okay with the monologue in Fury Road.
I love the monologue. Yes,
that was very fitting. And then we see Max. He eats a 2-headed reptile. Awesome. The other ones, I don't like them. It's like the Godzilla movies, the Kong movies that insert these like news.
I like Beyond Thunderdome's one a lot too.
I didn't. It threw me off. I was like, what? Okay. I know this. Next. And it was just very off to come into this movie and it's like 911, what's your emergency? You're like, what is going on? And then it's so brief, and then I think it was in black and white. I'm not even sure what was actually on the screen. And then it transitioned from that black and white to Furiosa grabbing that peach. We should have just started with Furiosa grabbing the peach.
You saying that about Furiosa grabbing that peach makes me think even harder on Max and Furiosa and Fury Road representing some form of Adam and Eve.
But that was an apple.
Well, I mean, we can't.
Hold your
horses, yeah.
No, I got you.
Because then her whole world turns upside down at that moment.
Yeah, that's true. And I do love that she kept that seed in her hair. That was pretty funny. I know it wasn't from that same peach, but I thought that was pretty funny.
One other thing I wanted to mention was the visuals. We have a very similar kind of visual language with the score, and it's awesome. It really can't be overstated. It's going to win many awards across the many ceremonies. One little thing I loved, not so little, it's kind of big, but small detail and fun yin and yang type thing, was Bullet Farm and Gastown. Gastown was built in like a pyramid scheme. The towers kind of came to a point in the center, right? And it was very vertical, while Bullet Farm was basically the reciprocal in that it was just flipped upside down into a quarry. I love the visual contrast, very cartoony in a similar way with our characters in Fury Road and, the new Furiosa, with things like Dementus's, red hair at some point and his chariot of motorcycles. That's just very over the top in its cartoony expression.
I love that you say that, because one of my favorite imageries here is when, after Furiosa loses her arm, she's driving a car that lost a wheel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, that's so clever. And like you said, it feels very cartoony. I like that. And there's a lot of those sprinkled throughout here. They're just having fun with this movie.
It's like they're making it a proper, like, Renaissance medieval style painting where everything collectively makes sense with itself. It's like you go through this Art 101 class and you learn why this, and this are important to one another and why this thing is so coherent. Mad Max, Furiosa.
How did you feel about the closing credits? Apparently, that's one of the many things people are not liking about this film.
They're weird. I will say they felt very 90s, 80s. I'm not sure. They felt really old.
They felt of that time when people clapped at movie theaters. They felt of that time where we're feeling very nostalgic, or we've been through these years with Mad Max, which we haven't. There's been gaps.
It's been a lot of gap.
Yeah.
25 years between Thunderdome and Fury Road. Too many.
Yeah, and we're no longer clapping at movie theaters. Although I'm down to bring that back. I'm fine with that. Because there's so much emotion when you watch a good movie at the movie theater. Especially this movie with its sound and score.
Yeah.
And the engines and everything revving, and you're just shaking in your seat, and everything's so loud and beautiful and perfect. And the movie ends and it makes you want to clap.
Yes. A really powerful movie can feel something like a religious experience. Transcendent.
So I understand why George Miller wanted to do this, but we're just not there anymore.
We see the exact same thing. Not exact, I guess, but we see something very, very, very similar in The Road Warrior, Mad Max 2, at the very beginning, when we're getting that introduction part of the world collapsed and all these wars and the water wars, and at the end of that sequence we get a really fast recap of the first Mad Max.
Yes, that's right.
And it's funny when you literally compare like the end of the world to, presumably real footage from World War II or whatever, and real crazy incidents that have happened across our timeline. and then you throw in the indie, super indie, cheap Mad Max 1 at the tail end of that. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny, but that's what it reminded me of.
That's funny. That's a very good point. And maybe because Mad Max was so successful, he wanted to remind you. And then here Fury Road was so loved that he wanted to remind you. You know, he was manipulating.
Or maybe it's a little bit self-indulgent because he loves Mad Max, and I can't blame him. You know, this is a really cool thing he's created. God forbid you love your work, you know?
Or maybe he's just old.
He is old, yeah.
And he thinks that's cool.
That's a distinct possibility. There's no doubt about it.
He's 79, apparently.
He must be Zack Snyder's dad.
Oh, dang.
Got him.
Got him.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for going through this franchise with me and talking about it here today. I am very happy that you liked every single one of these. More than me. I think you're a bigger fan. Maybe not. Maybe my love for Fury Road balances it a little bit because I think that's one of the greatest movies ever made. Maybe top 10.
Maybe our average would come out about the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
But man, yeah, thank you for watching these with me and talking about them here today.
You're welcome. I'm so glad we went to see this, and I'm so glad we went to see it at the movie theater. I wish I would have seen Fury Road.
Yeah, me too. I did not see that at the theater.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I feel like I would remember that. But the time has come. Do you have a budget guess for this monster of a movie? It's obviously a monster, right?
Yeah, I'm going 175 million.
That's a crazy number.
That is an insane number. I would be surprised if it's higher.
Well, it says here that it was 168 million, so you're very close in the ballpark. I accept that answer. And it's only been out for a week.
Okay.
And so far, it's made 71 million.
Oof.
It's Memorial Weekend, it only made like 35 or something. So it's not performing super well. It probably needs to hit close to that 400 million mark to have any hope for the next Mad Max film. This might be it.
But why? These movies are loved, clearly, from the Letterboxd scores at least.
Critically, like we saw Fury Road, people didn't go see it.
Why do people not want to go see movies anymore?
People went to go see Dune this year. This is a Dune-sized movie. You would think this would draw a lot of butts in.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the girl boss thing? Do you think that has any impact?
This is not that kind of movie. It's really not. I mean, I don't get that vibe from the trailer either.
Also, what's wrong with the badass girl? I feel like it's a little overstated in how many so-called girl boss films we have, because I truly cannot name one outside of Captain Marvel. But I don't know.
There's just this stink with girl boss movies when they're overdone. Like, she is a badass here, but no one has to tell us she's a badass. No one has to explain to us she's a badass. No one has to make Furiosa now above Immortan Joe or the ruler of the land, or... Do you see what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. I mean, she rips off her arm to get out of a scenario. Things don't come easy for Furiosa.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a revenge story, pretty much. And girl bosses aren't going to be revenge stories. They're going to be saving the world stories. Or...
Yeah, these are small potatoes.
Busy trying to talk about equality and women's rights and all these things that... I'm not opposed to them, but the way people are talking about them now is just so ugh and so cringe. Like, one of the biggest examples in my head of these girl boss movies or these lead women movies is the Ghostbuster movies that came out in 2016, I think. It just was so forced that it wasn't even funny and lost a lot of the charm, I guess, that the Ghostbuster movies have. And yeah, don't even get me started on Captain Marvel. It's like those movies chose a lead because they are a woman. Doesn't matter who, what character, nothing. Here we chose Furiosa because she's Furiosa. She could have been a dog. She could have been a beast. Like, she could have been anything, but we needed her to tell her story. It didn't matter that she was a girl. Like, once people get that through their head, and like you said very well in the beginning of this episode and in our previous episode, Fury Road is about Furiosa. She's practically the main person. And everyone loved that movie. Everyone claims they love that movie.
Well, I have seen some revisionist history in that it's not as good as the original 3. I'm like, I don't know if you were saying that 9 years ago, but okay.
I mean, yeah, that could be it, but every review video I watched or read said, I can't even compare it to Fury Road because that's a masterpiece. Or along those lines. So you were okay with a woman lead then, but there's just, again, that stink to it now that people are like, but you gotta feel it. You gotta feel for it. And it's also Anya Taylor-Joy. What have you seen that she's not good in? Like the Ghostbusters movie, okay, you had Melissa McCarthy. Okay, apples and oranges.
Or peaches.
Or peaches and apples, yeah. So that would be unfortunate if that's the reason.
Yeah, hopefully after all the glowing reviews, for the most part, critically, that is, it'll draw some attention to at least give reason to continue the trilogy. There's a third parter here that's very much intended.
Well, let's hurry up and give George Miller his money so he can make the next ones, because he's old. And he does a phenomenal job with Mad Max. I cannot see it in the hands of anyone else.
I mean, yeah, could you imagine? He has time and time again set the bar of what that cinema going experience can be like.
Yeah, agreed.
He brings shame to the Marvels and Star Wars and the Avatars, and definitely should be celebrated like the auteur he is.
Yep, go watch it. And I also understand if people just don't want to go to the movie theaters anymore. Because when we went, it wasn't packed, but it's definitely the most packed we've seen it in a while. Unlike Challengers, where we were the only ones in the movie theater. But in front of us, there was a guy that was on his phone the whole time. And it was very distracting in a dark movie theater.
Yeah, I was about to drop kick him from up above.
You were quite a bit up above, too. That would have been a good kick. So I get that. And when we went to go see Imaginary, we had those 2 kids that just kept walking in and out and getting in seats and talking on the phone. And oh my God, it was so distracting. So I can see that too, waiting for it to come to streaming so you can watch it in your house, in your PJs. Although you can totally take a blanket to the movie theater. But you get to bring your own snacks, you get to bring your own food. So I get it. I get it.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 284,000 people. That's a good number of folks. Where are they going? The people on Letterboxd must be the hardcore fan base going to see it, because that extrapolated should be probably more in the 300 million range.
How are people seeing it? Like festivals and stuff?
Yeah, this was probably at some of the festivals, but
does the box office take into account those tickets purchased?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
They weighed in at a 4.0, though. So very high scores, very similar to Fury Road at the end of the day. The majority definitely agrees that this is a great movie.
I don't know what I'm giving it yet. I gave Fury Road a 4, but I don't know if I would give this movie a 4, but 3.5 just seems too low. So I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out my Mad Max rating now, taking into account all the movies.
Walking out of the theater and thinking about it for a few days has definitely stuck me in the 3.5 realm, which is really great. You know, I think that's what I gave Dune 2, which is hella surprising, but but maybe after a rewatch I could see this inching up to a 4, but it's definitely not as good as Fury Road. I think that's par for the course though for what it has to offer, and its lore and more intimate story. And
yeah, I just love the War Boys so much in Fury Road and everything to do with them, from the non-main War Boys and their just radicalness and their metalness and everything about them, to Nux's character and Nicholas Holt's acting and everything he brought to the screen, and the characters, and Barry and Larry, his lumps, and oh my god, like, that elevates that movie so much for me that I'm having a hard time comparing them, because I also didn't love Furiosa in that movie like I do here.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you again for talking about this movie today, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys go see Furiosa. Stop playing. Go see it. Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on patreon.com/filmistines, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe for $1. Come request a movie. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives in the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon, at patreon.com/filmistines. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is The Filmistines, signing off.